everyone. First up, we have Emalie McMahon from the National Institute of Mental Health. She's going to be talking about understanding action prediction with machine learning and psychophysics.
Okay, so this is a project exploring action prediction. Action prediction is an incredibly important part of everyday life. When you're at the coffee shop and your barista goes to extend the cup of coffee out to you, you need to predict the terminal location of the cup of coffee so that there's a smooth exchange of the cup and you don't spill any of the coffee. It's also of interest in sports and has been studied in this realm before. When the goalie is trying to predict where the ball is going to go in the net, directed by the forward, she's using information, possibly using information in the forward's body before she even makes contact with the ball. The reason that she doesn't wait until the ball's already in the air is because the ball's moving so quickly and toward the net that if she waits until it's already quickly approaching the net, she's going to miss the ball and the forward is going to score. In the case of the barista, you and the barista have similar motivations. So he wants you to predict his action so that you have a smooth exchange of the cup of coffee, and this is an example of cooperation. In the example of the forward and the goalie in soccer, it's a competitive exchange because the goalie is motivated to read the information in the forward's body, but the forward would prefer to conceal this information so that she can score a goal. We want to study the similarities and differences between cooperation and competition in the lab. In order to do so, we've designed a game in which we have targets presented on a screen, either left or right, and there's an attacker. She's told through a pair of headphones whether she should touch the left target or the right target, and there's a blocker who's told in the cooperative condition to arrive to the target at the same time as the attacker, and told in the competitive condition to beat the attacker to the target. Throughout the game, the position of their finger is being recorded with a magnetic sensor with high precision. This is what the game looks like. It moves very quickly, and they have fun while they're playing. Because we're interested in the movements of the attacker, we drop a camera into the scene from the perspective of the blocker and record the attacker during the session. So again, in the cooperative condition, the attacker and blocker are told to arrive at the target at the same time. And in the competitive condition, the blocker is told to beat the attacker. Here's what these videos look like from the perspective of the blocker. You can see that the two conditions are fairly similar. I would like to suggest to you here that there are postural adjustments in the movements of the attacker for both conditions before their finger has even lifted off from the table that's giving information to the blocker that allows the game to progress so quickly. I'm going to call these postural adjustments preparatory movements, giving rise to preparatory information. From these videos, we aim to explore a series of questions. First, we ask when the goal becomes apparent to humans and to a machine learning classifier. Because there are these preparatory movements before the finger lifts off, can humans and a machine learning classifier use them to determine the direction of movement before the finger has even left the table? We're also going to compare the cooperation in competitive conditions and see how social context affects the ability to predict the action goal. And we're also going to look at where the cues are located at in the body that gives the machine learning classifier and humans this information. So first, we're going to address the question of how humans determine the goal using a psychophysics experiment. I display video clips from well before the movement starts up until one frame, one of these 6 cut frames relative to the start of the movement, where time 0 is the time that the finger is actually lifting off from the table. After watching one of these short clips, the participants are asked to determine whether the person in the video is moving towards the left or the right. We show them to 15 people, and they see 10 competitive attackers and 10 cooperative attackers. So now, we are going to do the experiment very briefly. I'm going to show you one of the longer clips that's cut after his finger moves from the table, and you're going to tell me whether you think he's going to move to the target on your left or on your right. Okay, so that one's pretty easy. This one's a little more difficult, so pay close attention. It's cut before her finger lifts off from the table. Right, okay, some of you got it right again, so it is right. You can see that there is some information in these movements, and some people are able to pick up on it some of the time. That's what I'm referring to as the preparatory movements. So from this psychophysics experiment, we can construct a psychometric curve. So what you're seeing on the x-axis is a time from movement start, where again, 0 is when the finger lifts off from the table, and the y-axis is the accuracy in determining the direction of movement. If I average the performance of the 15 participants here for one attacker, I can do it for all 10 attackers, and then I can find the average curve where the shaded area is a 95% confidence interval. What I would like to draw your attention to on this curve for the competitive attackers is that by time 0, people are reaching 80% accuracy, above 80% accuracy. So by the time the finger is lifting off from the table, people are able to determine well above 50%, which is chance, which direction the person in the video is going to go. So there's a remarkable amount of information in these subtle movements of the body. If I compare the cooperative condition to the competitive condition, what you'll notice is that there's a leftward shift of the cooperative curve relative to the competitive curve. I can quantify this shift by fitting a logistic function and finding the time of 75% accuracy, which is here plotted for the cooperative condition and the competitive condition. It's negative because the time of 75% accuracy is before the finger is lifting off from the table, and what you'll notice is that it's much earlier for the cooperative condition than the competitive condition. What this suggests is that there's more information available earlier in the movement of the cooperative attackers than the competitive attackers. And it further suggests that the cooperative attackers might be leveraging these movements to their benefit so that they can arrive to the target at the same time as their partner. So we have explored when it becomes apparent to humans, and we've seen that it's before the start of the movement, which is consistent with previous literature. And I've also suggested that cooperation may have more information than competition. We'll also look at when it becomes available to a machine learning classifier. To address this question, I take 2 subsequent video frames, and using a Gunnar-Farnbach optical flow algorithm, I determine the motion energy between these 2 frames. This is what it looks like as a still frame. We can also see it on the video, where changes from this baseline blue color to either brighter or darker represent more motion energy. From this motion energy, I can do what we're terming a multi-pixel pattern analysis and train a support vector machine on some of the optical flow data from 9 of the attackers in either competition or cooperation, and test it on a left-out attacker for the same condition. I do this iteratively so that each of the attackers are left out one time, and I do it frame by frame. The result is that I have a curve for the support vector machine results that mirrors that of human results, where again, the x-axis is time from start of the movement, 0 being the time the finger lifts off from the table, and the y-axis is the accuracy of the SVM in decoding the direction of movement. What you can see for the SVM is that there is also a leftward shift of the cooperative curve relative to the competitive curve, further shown in the time of 75% accuracy, being much earlier for cooperation than competition. We can also compare the SVM to humans directly because it looks like it's mirroring the results, but if we compare directly the SVM in light gray and behavior in dark gray, you see that the SVM is outperforming humans in both cooperation and competition. The interaction here is not significant. The SVM performing better than humans isn't particularly informative because this is a relatively easy task for the support vector machine. The humans are in roughly the same place the whole time. The motion is pretty stereotyped. They're either going to the left or the right. The SVM also has high acuity at all locations in the video frame, where humans only have high acuity where they're foveating. However, something that is interesting is if we correlate the results of the support vector machine with human behavior, where the time of 75% correct for humans is on the x, and the time of 75% correct for the SVM is on the y. Each point on this curve is going to represent the time for one attacker plotted against human and plotted against the SVM. And if we look at this correlation, we can see that there's a significant correlation between humans and the SVM for both conditions. What this means is that if it's difficult for a human to determine the direction of movement for a particular attacker, it's also difficult for the SVM to determine the direction of movement for the same attacker. We can also say from this correlation that whatever it is that humans are using to determine the direction of movement, we don't really know what it is, but it's correlated with the local information that the SVM is using to determine the direction of movement. So from this, we've seen that the machine learning classifier is also able to determine the direction of movement before the finger is lifting off from the table. And the SVM results mirror human results and seem to confirm that cooperation has more information than competition. However, there's an important difference between cooperation and competition that I haven't explored thus far, and that is in the speed of the attacker's reach. The competitive attackers are consistently reaching much faster than the cooperative attackers. This isn't surprising. It's been shown in comparisons of cooperation and competition before in different kinds of experiments. But I want to take this into consideration, which is something that other people haven't done before. If I do this, what you'll see on the left is behavior, on the right is the SVM, the top is the real time, and the bottom is the normalized time. The time is being normalized to the time that it takes for the finger to lift off from the table and to contact one of the targets. What happens when I normalize is that the competition and cooperation for human behavior is now directly on top of each other. And for the SVM, it looks like early in the movement, there might even be a leftward shift of the competitive curve relative to the cooperative curve. What this means is that the cooperative attackers are not able to change these bodily adjustments. All they're able to do to benefit their partner is to reach more slowly. The reason that that's interesting is because the competitive attackers are also motivated to conceal this information, but they're not able to do so. It comes about naturally, and even when you're motivated to change it, you can't. So we have to cross out the idea that cooperation might have more information than competition, and instead we can say that the cooperative attackers are reaching more slowly to benefit their partners, and that there is a lot of information even available in the competitive condition. From here, I can now explore where the cues are located at in the body. To do this, I'm going to build a spatiotemporal profile of the preparatory information in the body of the attackers by doing a searchlight analysis common to the field of neuroimaging. So pixel by pixel, frame by frame, I decode the direction of movement using a linear classifier on the optical flow data. Here, what you'll see on the left is the average decoding accuracy for the 10 competitive attackers, and the right is the average decoding accuracy for the 10 cooperative attackers, where brighter colors are going to represent higher decoding accuracy. And what you'll see is, so this is kind of the head, this is the arm. It gets blurry because it's over both left and right, but it looks like there's some higher decoding accuracy in the head and the arm of the cooperative attackers. Overall, though, there's not large differences between the two conditions, and the information is widely distributed throughout the body, the head, the hands, and even into the torso. To quantify these patterns, I do a region of interest analysis by defining regions on the body of the attacker, the head, the hand, arms, and torso. These regions are pretty rough approximations that work across all of our attackers, so that's why they don't exactly fit her body. But if I average the searchlight decoding accuracy for each of these regions and plot it through time for cooperation and competition, you see that it looks like there might be some favoring of cooperation for the head and the hand, and that the other regions might favor competition. None of the regions are significantly different except for these 2 time points in the left arm. The left arm is the arm that's not reaching toward the target. So the reason that that region might favor competition is because when they're reaching more quickly, they might have larger global postural changes to have a higher velocity of reach. I can normalize the region of interest analysis in the same way that I had done for the whole frame support vector results. And when I do this, you can see that there's a clear favoring of the competitive condition over the cooperative condition, meaning that there's actually now more information in competition when the attacker would be motivated to conceal this information than in cooperation. So looking at where the cues are located in the body, we've seen that the cues are widely distributed. In real time, it looks like there are similar patterns of distribution for both cooperation and competition, but after normalization, many regions actually favor competition. So returning to our barista, We've seen that there's information in his body that reveals where the terminal location of the cup is going to be so that you can have a smooth exchange. The same is true for the forward in soccer, when she would be motivated to conceal the information so that the goalie isn't able to block her kick from making it into the goal. From this, we've concluded that our bodily signals are actually betraying our goals in competition, and that these cues might be the result of biomechanical constraints that we're not able to control. And with that, I would like to thank Maryam Vaziri and Leslie Ungerleider, my mentors, and Ken Nakayama and Ray Gonzalez, who contributed to the work, and the NIMH Machine Learning Core, Francisco Pereira and Charles Zhang, who helped with some of the machine learning data and interpretation. Thank you. Okay.
What are like a big picture framing you would interpret these results in terms of like mental health or anything else? Do you see like a bigger picture framing for these findings?
I don't think there's a bigger picture framing in terms of mental health. In terms of action prediction, it's the idea that these kind of postural adjustments are due to biomechanical constraint that we can't control. And also, the application of the searchlight analysis to the video data is kind of novel, that could be applicable to many other things.
I wonder if you think it might be possible that the increased information in the competitive conditions might be used for compression for the time normalization.
It does compress. How do you mean that it would increase the information?
Velocity is higher.
I don't have a good answer to that. I can explore how the compression affects the information.
So how can you be sure that what the humans are using is a different strategy based on eye movements, for example? Because that's obviously a very good betrayer of where you might act on.
The eye movements of the attacker?
Yeah.
So I did individually identify where the eyes were at in the video, took it out of the searchlight analysis, and it didn't change the accuracy for the head region. So it looks like...
But it could be that they're using different strategies but coming to the same end goal because the eye movements maybe follow the same kind of trajectory as the postural movements, but that they end up still, decoding it in the
I
same
don't
way.
have a good answer to that. I would like to explore it more. The final way that we have looked to address that is looking at the eye tracking data of the participants viewing, and it looks like they start looking at the hand and then they go to the terminal location,
Okay.
and there's not a lot of scanning.